It's time for your daily LSU baseball update with Musso at the box. Now, Matt Musso.
And welcome in, Musso at the box. Much different looking Musso at the box, yes? Huh? Video element now this year. Happy to be doing it. I'm not going to lie, it was a bit more of a process than I thought that it would be, than I really wanted it to be, but we're here. I'll get into some of the changes on the show before we get into the baseball, but make no mistake about it, there is a lot of baseball that I want to talk about pertaining to this LSU team in 2024. Expectation, again, in no short order for the defending champions, and they do have a path to get back to it. There's so much that I want to talk about. Obviously, we won't get to it all here in this show, but we will space them out. My plan right now is to be back daily leading into the season. No really day off here, day off there. I think we have enough to go on to where here, now that they've been in camp, this is Friday. They've been in preseason camp now for a week. Up to this point, we're still early enough that there's enough to go through, enough to talk about, that we should easily be able to carry through next week. And then after that, it's game week. After that, it's game week. So, again, getting started a little bit later on in the preseason than we normally do here, but we're here, and nobody's happier than me to be back talking with all of you about the LSU baseball program. When we last left you, it was right after the MLB draft, and we kind of took our first look at the 2024 roster. They still had transfer portal to go through. They still had some turnover. They had to get the number down to 40. They had to go through fall. They've done all of that, and now here we are back. So what I want to do from a baseball perspective with today's show is kind of an overview. Again, like I said, there's so much I want to talk about where we'll do our normal preseason episodes. If you've been listening, this is now year 5 of the show. If you've been listening to the previous 4, you know what I kind of mean there. Today will just be more of an overview because, like I said, they've been in camp for a week. It's still early enough where we can look back at kind of some of the stuff from fall, how it carries over, what could potentially change going forth over the next 2 weeks before they throw out the first pitch against VMI. So we'll do some of that today, but we will get to a much more in-depth preview of the pitching staff, of the offense. We'll take a look at the schedule. We'll do an SEC preview. We will talk about some individual players. We'll have scrimmage recaps, all of that leading up to game week when finally we'll preview the opener against VMI and the rest of the games that weekend. Of course, they'll play the round robin starting on February the 16th. All right, before we get into that, though, I do want to talk about the changes to Musso at the box this year. Obviously, the most obvious, hi, I'm on camera, you can all see me now. I hope that's a good thing. Maybe it's not. If it is, you're welcome. If it's not, I apologize. But regardless, I'm going to be here in this chair all season long, and you'll be able to see me now. Just another option for viewing, another way to grow the podcast more. Last year was great, again, in the audio-only format. It continued to grow, so why not capitalize more when, look, they're not going to be bad anytime soon, or at least we're not thinking that. Capitalize more and grow it onto another platform, and that's what we're going to do with YouTube. So get to YouTube and subscribe to the Musso at the Box channel. Just type in Musso at the Box. It should pop up. Subscribe. Hit the bell if you're into the YouTube format. Hit the bell. You'll get notified every time a video posts, every time a podcast posts. And subscribing helps out the channel an awful lot. Share it. Tell your friends. Get over there. Let's blow this thing up. If you want another way to find it, that's the easiest. But you can also go to the 104.5 ESPN YouTube channel, and Musso at the Box's channel is linked there along with, all the other shows, AFR, Off the Bench, The Hunt Palmer Show, things of that nature. It's all right there. So that's the way to find it, and it'd be very, very much appreciated. Subscribe, Musso at the Box, YouTube channel, hit the bell, and get notified every time I post a video, every time we post a podcast. The audio elements still there. They will still be there. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, the 104.5 ESPN app, wherever you get your podcast, I'm there as well. That part doesn't change. The other change that we're going through here that I want to pass along, and again, it's a podcast. Come at your leisure whenever, but the episodes, the shows will be dropping earlier this season. My plan is to have all of them dropped at 6 a.m. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. again, it allows it to live a little bit longer throughout the day. But have you seen LSU's schedule? Early in the season, they're playing at 2 o'clock damn near every day. So we got to have enough time for the previews and things like that to breathe. So that's the other kind of change. Normally it was more around, last year and the previous years, it's been more around like 10:30, 11 o'clock when we'd get them out. We're going to try to get them out all 6 a.m. this year. There might be a few that have to linger. I'll keep you updated and let you know. But that's that, man. Look, again, I apologize kind of for the delay to get in here. No one's been happier now that it's done and I can just sit here and talk baseball with all of you than I am. Thank you for being patient, and let's have a great season. With that being said, let's talk some baseball. Let's talk LSU. So, like I've said plenty of times already throughout this, they've been in camp now for a week here on Friday. They had a scrimmage last night, or I should say yesterday afternoon at the box. They'll have another one today at 3:30. They are set to have one on Saturday at 1, but well, the rain delays might already be starting now, right? The 8-mile radius might already be starting now. The weather for tomorrow in Baton Rouge looks terrible, so we'll see if they can actually get out onto the field and scrimmage at the box. But if not, they have one set for Sunday as well at 1 o'clock. My plan is to be out there for both, to be out there Saturday and Sunday. Can't make today. Obviously, I'll be working throughout the afternoon, but Saturday, Sunday, I plan to be out there. Monday, we have a full day on Musso at the Box of scrimmage recap. That's the plan. So, again, this will be more overview. A few thoughts on what happened yesterday at the box, because they played a little long ball, and you had a lot of the guys we're going to touch on did well yesterday in the scrimmage. So, we'll tie it into that for today. But, again, mainly overview. So, let's get into it. And I kind of went back and forth on where to start, whether it's, all right, start with the offense and maybe the position players, because that's where you have so much to replace from a volume standpoint, right? We know you have to replace Paul Skeens, arguably the greatest pitcher in this program's history. But from a volume standpoint, you have to replace a lot position player and lineup-wise. Should I start there? Should I start pitching? Because I'm going to be the next to tell you. I'm not going to be the first. I'm going to be the next to tell you that this pitching staff's insanely deep. This pitching staff has a chance to be a top 5 staff in the country, in my opinion. This pitching staff is potentially top to bottom. Actually, no, screw the potentially. Top to bottom, it's more talented than last year's. Top to bottom. Again, I'm the latest to tell you that. And you've heard it probably from many. And we'll go through why, but it supports it. So do I start there? I'm actually not going to start at either of those places. I'm going to start with the big, broad overview of the expectation hanging over this program now in year number 3 for Jay Johnson, coming off the program's 7th national championship. And everybody wants to know, how do you do it again? It's the same thing that we've seen in women's basketball here, where they had a great transfer class. Kim Mulkey did after winning the national championship. You have Angel Reese coming back. You have Flau'jae coming back. You add Haley Van Lith. You add Anissa Morrow. You all know, you follow LSU sports. It's been a bit more of a struggle, and everybody wanted to know. Well, I don't want to say struggle, but as of late, they've hit the skids a little bit. Their issues are being exposed a little bit more as the season goes on. Not to say they can't still do well, but the conversation around that was, you won it. You were a year early. You had all this great talent come in. How do you do it again? When you look at LSU baseball, they weren't a year early. They were the preseason number 1 team. Everyone expected that to happen, and it did, which is an impressive feat in and of itself. But again, now, how do you do it again? And that is going to be the challenge that faces this team. And what has been so interesting to listen to when you hear Jay Johnson talk about that is they're not approaching it as defending champions, which sounds so easy to say. Does it not? Oh, it's a brand new year. Target's on your back, but they're not even approaching it as that. LSU looks at this right now as a target's not on their back. They're not the hunted. They want to still be the hunters. They are trying to attack this at every angle possible. And I have a cut here that I want to play from Jay Johnson from Media Day, where he talked about how pleased he is with the approach of the players, given the fact that, all right, now all the expectation is on you as the defending national champion. How are you going to take that and attack everything in front of you, not play timid, not play as the hunted, but the hunter.
I'm really pleased with the players right now. There is an attitude about we need to go about this a certain way to try to keep our seat at the table, because we have a great schedule. We have great challenges. It's another up year for the SEC. Everybody's getting twice as many players as we are in the portal, and so there's some challenges, but how they're going about attacking those challenges has been really positive. There's no complacency, and just this thought that there's a need to accomplish something for them.
Everyone getting better players than you in the transfer portal. LSU got some pretty darn good players in the transfer portal that we'll talk an awful lot about. But the thing that I love there so much is no complacency. And I think, obviously, look, it's easy to get complacent when you had as much success as that team did. A few weeks ago, I was starting to look back at some stuff from the regular season, not just the regular season, from the entire season in 2023, and just kind of some preparation for this. And I'm sitting in my office, and I audibly laughed multiple times, just looking at how ridiculous that team was. Dylan Cruz hit 405 in conference play. That is so stupid. Okay, Tommy White drove in 105 RBI. It's absurd. The stuff that Paul Skeens struck out 209, but with his 203rd broke a record, right? Golden Spikes, Dick Hauser, top 2 players. It was absurd. It'd be very easy to get complacent with some of that. And here's one reason I think there isn't complacency on this team. Number one, Jay Johnson in 2 years and some change has built an incredible culture at LSU. Incredible. Where guys show up, they work on their own, they get their stuff done, they're prepared always. It is a very be about your business, stand on your business type deal at LSU. That's number one. Number two, when you go and you look at this team that's coming back, there are plenty of players from last year's team still here at LSU. But a lot of them maybe weren't asked to do that much last year. I mean, you can look at a guy like Bear Jones and see, he hit over 300, had 14 homers and almost 50 RBI in his freshman season. That's incredible production. But then there's a guy like Paxton Kling, who's going to be looked upon to be a massive part of this team, who, look, I can look it up right here. Paxton Kling played in 57 of the 71 games, only started 22 of them. While there's a lot of action there in 57 games, it would appear some of that was defensive replacement, some of that was pinch running. He wasn't looked upon throughout the entire course of the season to be that big of, that guy. Michael Braswell's coming in from South Carolina. He wasn't on the team last year. He's hungry to go get it. Brady Neal spent most of the year injured. He's hungry to go get it. You see what I mean? We can keep going down the line if you would like. You look at the pitching staff, you bring in plenty of new guys who weren't here last year and are in that same boat who are hungry to go get it. I think that's another reason the complacency is non-existent at LSU, and I think that bodes extremely well for them going forward into this year, because Jay Johnson in that cut we just played said, we have a nice schedule. No, Jay, you have a freaking meat grinder. LSU's conference schedule this year sucks. It is very difficult. You get the top 3 teams from the East out of your 4. We're going to save all that right down for the schedule show, but isn't that easy in the SEC? It really is not going to be easy for LSU this year. But again, we'll go through that. So to not have that complacency is going to serve this team very, very well. And again, I think that's one reason, because a lot of the guys that you do have back from last year maybe weren't giant contributors in the sense of, a Dylan Cruz, a Trey Morgan, a Braden Jobert, a Cade Beloso, Gavin Dugas, all of those guys from a position standpoint, and you don't have Paul Skeens, you don't have Ty Floyd. Thatcher Hurd's back, but it was a big struggle for Thatcher Hurd for the majority of the season last year, right? He came on great at the end. Really, in that Alabama series to the finish, he was fantastic. Nate Ackenhausen, we all remember the game against Tennessee, but spent a lot of the year injured. So, again, that's just kind of why, one reason I look at that. Now, if we want to shift gears and kind of get into an overview of the team itself from a player standpoint, I want to start with the position players and a lineup, because it's not that I don't want to say pitching isn't a question. It is. You just feel a lot more confident about the answer to that question. Is that fair? I think that's fair. I can look up and down the pitching staff and be like, okay, I know what I have out of him and him and him and him. This guy's coming in very highly touted. I've seen a little bit of this guy so far in scrimmages. There's enough there that you're going to be able to piece together. And there's enough there offensively that you can piece together. I think it just might take a little bit longer. One of the major questions is how many spots are solidified. And I will tell you, sitting here with them being in practice, preseason practice for a week, I think the majority of those spots are settled. Unless somebody just explodes here in the preseason and they're so hot going into week one that you can't justify not having them in the lineup. That's kind of what happened with Bear Jones last year. Bear Jones went on about a 3-week tear in the preseason where you got till game week and it's like, okay, 22 has to be in there. I don't care who, at this point, that guy's so scorching hot off against a pitching staff that would ultimately win the national title. I know they struggled. Go away. He had to be in there. And you saw it early. Why? He was awesome. So unless that happens, I actually think the majority of these positions are set right now. I think guys have their job, and it's up to others to go take them. Now, again, we're 1 week into this. It can all change. But if I'm looking at it, we'll start in the outfield. Mac Bingham, the transfer from Arizona, I think he's going to play left field. Paxton Kling, I think, is going to play center, and Jake Brown, the true freshman, is going to play right. We know Tommy White's going to play third base. Michael Braswell is going to be your shortstop, and that's why he was brought here. That's what he's going to do. And he looks really good. If you want, I know we didn't get to do a fall recap because football just kept me so busy this year doing responsibilities with that. I was able to get out to the box a little bit and talking with other people who were there and around the program and things of that nature. Michael Braswell was one of my biggest takeaways because when he hit the transfer portal, and there's an episode of this somewhere, it was crazy because it was in the middle of them winning the Super Regional and then going to Omaha that they got him on campus and he committed and all of that. So it's wedged in between some of those episodes. But when I touched on him, I said, look, we know what the defensive ability is. We saw it up close and personal when LSU played South Carolina 3 times last season, twice in Columbia and once in the SEC tournament. The main thing is the bat. The bat lagged. Okay, but if he can come here, suck up everything on the infield at shortstop, and work with one of the best hitting coach teams, Jay Johnson and Coach Wanaka, they can hopefully get him to that next level. You knew he was going to be awesome in the field. And I'll be honest, he's better than I thought he would be in the field. It just looks so smooth. It looks like it's supposed to. You watch him, you watch the motion, you watch his movement, how he gets in front of the ball. You watch him play shortstop and you go, yeah, that's what they look like. The question was the bat. All he did is come here and lead the team in hitting in the fall. Okay, check. Feel really good about that now, right? In the scrimmage yesterday, he was 2 for 3. So he's keeping it going against a really good pitching staff. That guy's going to be your shortstop. Josh Pearson, I really think he's going to play second base and looks good. And, back to the complacency thing for a minute. The guys you do have back are great leaders who did play like a Tommy White, like a Josh Pearson. Anytime we talk about Josh Pearson here, anytime Jay Johnson talks about him, the word he always uses is trust. The amount of trust they have in that young man is, I don't really know if you can measure it. So that also helps with complacency. And for him to be as versatile as he is and just be able to move, around outfield down to second base and looks pretty good at second base, I think that's going to be your opening day second baseman. Jay Johnson told you at Media Day that Jared Jones is going to play first. I think Hayden Jervinsky DHs. I think Brady Neal's going to be your catcher. Brady Neal, by the way, went yard in the scrimmage yesterday as well. I think those are pretty set. Now, again, it can change. We've been in this thing for a week. But that's where I stand right now a week into it. That should be the lineup you see out there. Now, how long does it take them to get going? That's going to be a separate story. Because there aren't a whole bunch of at-bats necessarily there. I mean, look, I can go down the list. Paxton Kling had 90 at-bats last year, right? I mean, Josh Pearson, he ended up with 137. He played a lot down the stretch there. Jared Jones, 161. But you compare that to a guy like Tommy White, who had 273 at-bats just last year alone. That's Hayden Travinski had 104 at-bats last year. He's been hurt an awful lot. So it might take them a while to kind of get things going. Here, I'll get Michael Braswell for you at his time at South Carolina last year. Jake Brown doesn't have a collegiate at bat yet. He's going to be a true freshman. Michael Braswell last year at South Carolina had 153 at bats. That was down from 201. So they're 354 bats in his career. Tommy White had 273 last year. So you see what I mean? It could just take a little bit of time to then find their groove, for them to find their lineup. One of the big questions: who's going to protect Tommy White? We touched on it a little bit there in the beginning, where Tommy had 105 RBIs last year. He ain't having 105 RBIs this year. It's just not going to happen. It's not because he's going to be any less talented of a hitter. He's actually probably gotten better, which is absurd to think. But he's not hitting behind Dylan Cruz, Trey Morgan, and Gavin Dugas and Cade Beloso anymore. He's not hitting behind guys who are just constantly on base. So naturally, you're going to see a regression there, but you have to be able to have somebody to protect him. You know Tommy White's really good. I know Josh Pearson's really, really good. Hayden Travinski was awesome down the stretch last year. But again, he's been hurt a lot. You haven't really seen the full effect there. I think Paxton Kling can be really good. He had a grand slam yesterday. I think Brady Neal can be really, really good. Neal hit the ball very well in the scrimmages last season, but struggled when you got into the season. But that's a guy who enrolled early. He should have still been in high school, and now he's taken himself, in an off season, having a rehab and whatnot. But the little bit of summer ball he played, he hit the ball well again. He's hitting the ball well again right now. I think that guy can be really good for you. Jared Jones, the strikeout number is going to have to come down there, but I saw him hit 300 last year. We can talk about the SEC only stats, and that's fair. The numbers took a hit. You got to get the strikeouts down. I understand. But again, I think that guy can really take the next step. Jake Brown, haven't seen him take a lead. Think he's going to be very good. How long does it take those guys to fall into place? That's going to be key with the offense. But the thing I go back to, and you're going to hear me say this an awful lot, not just on this, but when we get to the offensive preview and we give out a projected lineup and things like that, you're going to hear me say this an awful lot. It might take them a little while, but they're going to get there because they are being coached by one of the greatest hitting coaches in the country. The quote that sticks with me every single time about something like this, and I believe it was at his introductory press conference. It was either at that or one of his first media availabilities after. Maybe I can go dig it up, from Jay Johnson, where he talked about the hitting in the lineup and said something to the effect of, there will never be a time where our players step into the box and don't know what we're trying to accomplish. They don't know the plan. With that approach, they will get there eventually on offense. But I'm going to take that real slow. My plan is to not come in here after they, beat up on VMI and whoever else, and Xavier and North Dakota State in the non-conference, and freak out about the offensive numbers they're putting up, because they're going to hit a meat grinder in that SEC, and they might regress back down to the mean. It's just how much. Where can they go? You got a great early test against Texas in Houston this year at the College Classic there. That'll be your first real look at them, but they have the pieces there. It's just, how do they fit them in? Can the guys we think will take the next step, Paxton Kling, Michael Braswell, Jared Jones, Brady Neal, those guys, can they take the next step? That's going to be massive. The other thing I want to touch on with position players around the infield is this, because we have had this conversation an awful lot over the last at least 5 years, maybe 6 or 7, about the infield depth at LSU. And it just hadn't been great. And you've seen Josh Pearson, the reports of him playing second base. You might have just heard me mention it there, and maybe that's the first time you heard it. And you're saying, Josh Pearson at second base? Well, yeah. And it's something else that Jay Johnson spoke about, and you'll hear him throw out other names, spoke about on Media Day about the positional versatility with this team and why it's so important. And I want to touch on it. But here, first, give a listen to Jay.
When you're recruiting more pitching, investing in more pitching, in terms of scholarships, the number on that position player side goes down in terms of guys ready to step in and win an SEC game. So the fact that they can do multiple things really helps. You mentioned the catchers with, Brady. I have no problem throwing Brady second base, third base, left field, right field. Hayden will see a lot of time with DH at bats. There's no question about that. I think he'll be one of the most dangerous hitters in college baseball this year. And Alex is probably exclusively a catcher. Jake Brown can play all three outfield spots, can play first base, and it helps a lot, especially with maybe the construction of this roster in terms of where we sit today with depth, with matchups, because it may not be quite the same in terms of bodies.
So here's what I see whenever I look at LSU's position players. I see a lot of numbers. I don't necessarily see a lot of experience, right? We've talked plenty about Paxton Kling here throughout, where he's a guy that they expect you just go. Like, all right, it's your time now, kid. Get in there and go. But not a whole bunch of experience at the plate or in the field. You heard him mention Jake Brown, who can play all three outfield spots and first base, and also he can pitch. I don't know if LSU's going to pitch with him this year, but he's a pretty incredible arm, too. If you were to go back and listen to our draft coverage, when we talked about him and being a draft risk, it was mainly from a pitching standpoint. So he can sling it. But he's a freshman, right? You went and got a lot of pitchers, and we're about to get there. So maybe your position players lack, like Jay says. But, again, I look at the outfield, I see a log jam. I mean, Ashton Larson's pretty darn good. He might not be able to find the field early. Zebradell is the scrimmage darling for everybody. You put the kid out there, all he does is hit the ball and make plays that you need him to make. He might not be able to really break in there, right? So that's what I'm getting at there. But one of the massive things to tie this all back into where it started with the infield depth is, and Jay said it at the end of that cut, maybe it's not what it is with the bodies. And I think what he means by that is maybe not the physical bodies, because LSU's got infielders. Like, they've got them. The problem is, after White, Braswell, now Pearson, and Jones, they're all freshmen. All of them. I mean, you could say Guidry, sure, but he's focusing on pitching right now, and it wouldn't be something he just would be, so adept to just slide into. But other than that, Steven Milam, freshman. Jake Brown, who can play first base, freshman. Austin Rowling, freshman. Ryan, I still haven't learned how to say this kid's last name. Sorry, Ryan. Ryan Kruchek, freshman. The health of LSU's infield is going to be paramount this year, because I think you can actually be really strong up the middle with Braswell and Pearson. And I like Jared Jones at first base. We talked a lot about that last year. Jared Jones, I know replacing Trey Morgan is going to be looked upon as this massive task, and I get it. Trey Morgan is incredible. He was arguably the best first baseman we've ever seen at LSU. And I really actually don't know if it's that much of an argument. He was also a pretty darn good left fielder, too. He was out there diving and making catches, and, I mean, he's just an athlete. But I want to show you something with this. So Jared Jones last year, he started, hold on, I have to get to it. Pardon me on that. I thought I had it pulled right up. I don't. Let me get down to it. So I have the exact numbers for you. Jared Jones last year started 47 games. 34 of them were at first base. The other 13 were at DH. He never started at another position. Sure, he might come in at catcher or whatnot, but out of his 47 starts, 34 of them were at first base. By the way, Trey Morgan had 29 starts at first base last year. So you saw an awful lot of Jared Jones there. In those 34, starts, you're looking at that, just 34 starts at first base. Jared Jones fielded 987. Trey Morgan fielded 990 last year. And again, I know the split isn't totally there. Part of it's in the outfield, part of it's in first base. It's 3 points different. It's three. Yeah, we'll go 3 points. 3 points difference. It's really 300ths of a point, or 3 thousandths of a point. But anyway, that's not important. He can do it. He might not make the spectacular play that Trey Morgan made over there, but he's going to make the plays. It's right there in the number when you saw him there 34 times last year. So I like that. But again, if any of those guys goes down, you're likely relying on a freshman, and that's going to be a really hard spot for them to slide into. So the positional versatility, huge. That's where maybe you could see a guy like Brady Neal go in there. You heard in that cut from Jay Johnson say, I'm comfortable playing him third, second, wherever, because you might need that. Otherwise, it's going to be one of the freshmen who might quite not be there. So while the depth and the kind of to use his word, the bodies might actually be there, I see the lack of experience. But what I also see is you're on the upward trend, and it's not going to be that way for very long. Okay, speaking of very long, I'm going very long. Let me get to the pitching. We'll wrap this up, and we'll see you back here on Monday. The pitching staff, set it off the top, they're awesome. Like, they're really, really deep. And Michael Braswell, I mentioned, is one of my big takeaways from the fall. My other biggest takeaway was the 3 guys that you looked at to be your starting rotation all looked like they could do it. All of them. And that's what's going to be massive for this team is the starting rotation. Thatcher Hurd looked great in the fall. Fastball's up and velocity's up to 98 miles an hour pretty consistently now. He's still got the slider and the big overhand curve. He really came into his own and carried that over into the fall. And if he continues to do that, he's going to be able to pitch extremely well for you in a starting role in the weekend. And he looked the part in the fall already, and that was huge. Luke Holman, same thing. Fastball, low to mid-90s, good stuff. Pitched on Friday nights last year in the SEC out of necessity for Bamo and Hessen. McMillan went down and did a really nice job and looked the part last year. For what it's worth, let me get to the scrimmage stat. Sorry, Twitter's not working on my laptop, which is really stupid and quite frankly, just very, very annoying. Luke Holman in the scrimmage yesterday, 4 innings, 1 hit, 4 strikeouts. Did give up an earned run. Oh well, don't care. 4 strikeouts, 4 innings. That's really good. That guy can be a starting pitcher. He showed it in the fall. It's kind of carrying over here early in the preseason. Again, that's huge. Gage Jump. Gage Jump could very well get the ball on Friday night to start the season for this team. Could very well. The stuff's incredible. And I think more of them coming off the injury, maybe where they were going to ease him in. At least that's kind of something I thought. Guy led your team in the fall in whip, batting average against. I mean, pick it. He was incredible. So you look at that and you see those 3 guys that you had really tabbed to be your starting pitcher, and all of them look the part. And that's so massive because LSU has not had that since 2017. You talk about the bullpen struggles last year, how much of that is wiped out if you have a rotation similar to what you could have this year, where all of them are capable of going 6-7 innings. You keep that, you can whittle that bullpen down to the guys you really, really trust and keep them fresh with that. And that's what LSU has the potential to do this year. And on top of that, it's incredibly deep, this staff. I went through and counted, including two-way players, 25 pitchers, 10 of them left-handed. You take out some of the two-way players, it goes down more to about 20, because like a Jake Brown. Jake Brown's going to play in the field, probably not pitch. It's around 20, 21. That's absurd. You look at a guy like DJ Primo, who's going to be in the game in big spots. He redshirted last year. They couldn't get him on the mound. But he's taken a jump enough that he's going to be a factor in this. Just talk about, you still have Nate Ackenhausen. You know what you like in him. Gavin Guidry? Anybody? Yeah. Number 1 can go out there on the mound for me still and shove and get out. Griffin Herring? Yeah, he's back. I mean, go down. Sam Dutton, Javen Coleman. Saw Javen Coleman last weekend in a scrimmage. Looked fantastic. Struck out 2 and 2 shutout innings. Was great in that scrimmage last Saturday. Looked like he did when oh man, I think it was against Alabama. That out of the game 2 against Alabama, I'm pretty sure he was just absolute nails that night. That's what he looked like. Okay, yeah, you got that guy still? Sure. And then you add in a Justin Lure for the back end of your bullpen. And that's another thing that gives me confidence with the bullpen this year. You have multiple guys that can close the game. Multiple guys that can close out the game. Justin Lure had 7 saves last year for Xavier and a 1.89 ERA. Yeah, that guy can go close the game for you. We already saw what Gavin Guidry did at the back end of baseball games for LSU. That guy can go close the game for you. How about Cam Johnson? If the lefty really comes along, a lefty throwing 98 as a freshman, coming in at the back end of the bullpen potentially, sure, that could happen. You don't need all of them to close the game, so then they can all slide into other roles. It's a trickle-down effect. And again, like I said, you have the guys taking that next step, like a DJ Primo. That is just the depth of this staff and the strength of it could be the starting rotation, which hopefully won't tax your bullpen as much. That's something that Jay Johnson has not had yet in his 2 seasons at LSU, is that starting rotation. And again, it's something LSU hasn't had since 2017. But to have that starting rotation back to where hopefully it doesn't tax your bullpen as much and you stay fresh with the depth that they have. Because look, injuries are going to happen. Somebody, I'm not wishing it on anyone, believe me. But chances are somebody's going to go down with an injury this year. But you're stacked and loaded with talent and depth and versatility in many different roles. No, you don't have a Paul Skeens, but they went out there. I had it told to me they went out there and got the guys they thought were closest to him to come be starting pitchers in the portal. There wasn't a Paul Skeens in the portal, but they got the guys they thought were closest to him that they could find and brought them here. It's Moneyball. You've seen the movie Moneyball? The scene where he's sitting around with the scouts, Brad Pitt, Billy Bean, Brad Pitt's character, sitting around with the scouts, and they ask him, or he's asking them about Jason Giambi. Is there another player out there like just no? And if there was, could we afford him? No, but maybe we can recreate him. That's kind of what they're going for, right? There wasn't another Paul Skeens, but hey, there's 2 guys that we think are the closest potentially to him that we could find. Let's get them here and put them in our rotation and see. And they both look the part. I'm fired up for this pitching staff. Can you tell? I cannot wait to watch them go because the options are endless. The talent is plentiful. And what I'm just the most excited about, and I've said it probably 5 times already just in this one friggin' little segment, is the possibility of having a 3-man rotation to start that is dominant and the potential for someone to emerge that midweek as a 4th starter because, you need that. You look at LSU going through the losers bracket, you had those guys show up in spot start. So they have everything in front of them. They have a few more weeks to go, and then they'll throw it out against VMI. And we'll get our first look at this team in a game that actually matters. We have so much to go through over the next few weeks to do that, though. That's going to wrap us up here today on Musso at the Box, but we have plenty more to come. Again, on Monday's show, well, actually, first, let me say this. Like, subscribe, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcast audio-wise, and then get over to YouTube, search Musso at the Box, and subscribe to the channel. And hit the bell so you're notified every time a podcast drops. Again, we're going to try to get them all out at 6 a.m. this year. Every time it posts, you'll be notified if you hit that bell. Musso at the Box on YouTube. Subscribe, share it to your friends, get it out there. Let's have a great season. On Monday's show, again, like I said, I'm hoping to spend the weekend out at the Box. Be here recapping everything that I saw. I'll sit there, I'll score the scrimmage and whatnot, and we will talk about everything that stands out on Monday's show. So be here for that. It's great to be back, fired up to be back with all of you here for another season on Musso at the Box. Let's settle in because they got the talent, they got the potential, they've got the staff. That's another thing I want to talk about in the next coming weeks. Can they go make another run? We're a few weeks away from starting to find out the answer to that question. This has been Musso at the Box. Again, like, subscribe, share it out. Follow me on Twitter at Musso Matthew, and be here on Monday. We're recapping the scrimmage weekend at the Box on Musso at the Box.